Welcome to the show. This episode is going to be probably short and sweet, but this is something that I read that really impacted the way that I'm thinking about making effort, overcoming laziness, motivation to get up and get it done. I saw this post by Elon Musk. He posted something by a guy named Scott Adams on X, used to be Twitter. And it was a little 2-minute video. And the premise was, what if laziness is nothing more than the habit, a bad habit, of thinking about all the effort or the cost instead of just thinking about the payoff? So let me repeat that. Laziness is nothing but the habit of thinking about the cost, thinking about the effort, all the work it's going to take, instead of thinking about the payoff. So what if you could reverse laziness just by, instead of thinking about the cost and thinking about the effort, you think about the payoff, you think about the upside, you think about all the benefits. He utilized the example of, why do people have multiple children, right? So I have 4 kids, and in this instance, he was talking about women, because they got a lot more work to do than the man. But still, even as a man, I'm like, having this baby, a newborn baby, taking care of it, they're up in the night, you're not sleeping, it needs around the clock care. And why would you go through that again? If you stop and you think about all the costs and all the effort of bringing another child into the world, you wouldn't do it, right? But people say they forget, and I'll say I forget. After about 1.5 years, 2 years of having a baby, I would forget. I'd be like, yeah, let's have another one. Let's have another baby. That's fine. Because I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about, wow, I'm going to get to enjoy my son or my daughter for the rest of their lives, the rest of my life. I'm going to have this great nucleus of a family of people that love each other and get along. And it's going to be worth it. I'm thinking about the outcome. I'm thinking about the payoff. And obviously for the woman, she's got to go through 9 months of being pregnant and being hungry and being uncomfortable, and then the whole scary experience of actually having the child, and maybe even having to have a C-section or complications, and on and on. God bless women, because that is a huge ordeal to have a baby. But the very preservation of society and perpetuation of society is predicated on people being able to forget and not think about all the work and all the effort, and focus on that positive outcome, focus on that reward, focus on the payoff. So I think about the little things, right? With going to the gym, right? I got to go to the gym at 3:00 today, right after this podcast. I got to go to the gym, and it's not something I really want to do, right? And if I think about how hard it's going to be, and I'm going to be sore, and I'm going to be breathing hard, and I'm probably going to feel nauseous, and like I got to drive all the way over there and get sweaty and everything else, it's terrible, right? But if I think about, well, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to be in shape, I can pick up my kids and carry them up and down the stairs, I'm going to be around for my daughter's wedding, I'm going to look good with my shirt off, I'm not going to be throwing my back out all the time, and all these like positive outcomes that are coming from staying in shape. That's what I focus on, right? And that's what generates those endorphins or that dopamine to motivate me to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go one more time. And as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about back in the day, right? I'm talking 7-8 years ago, when I was in my construction company. I wasn't making the money I wanted to make. I didn't have the time freedom I wanted to have. And I remember thinking about real estate and thinking about buying an apartment complex. And as literally, this is no joke, every morning I would take a shower, and in the shower I would think about apartment complexes. I really would. And I wouldn't think about, oh, this is going to be so hard to find a deal, this is going to be so hard to raise the money, how am I going to get the loan, what about the property management? I wouldn't think about that, all the work that it was going to take to do this. Right? Honestly, a lot of that stuff didn't really cross my mind at the time. What I thought about was, wow, what if I own an apartment complex? Man, I'll be paying off this much amount in debt. This many people would be paying me rent. This is what my mortgage is going to cost. and this is what my expenses are going to be, and this is how much cash flow I'll have per door. And if I get 10 units, it'll be this much. If I get 100 units, it'll be this much. If I get 1,000 units, it'll be this much. And on top of that, I'll be paying off, this much amount in debt every year, and they'll be going up in value by 2 or 3% a year. And in 20 years, this will be worth this, and I can refinance this. And I'm thinking through all these good scenarios and good outcomes that could happen from buying apartment complexes. And I don't know if I meant to do it or just stumbled on it, but that was just the way that my brain works. And when you look at what you might call an ambitious person or somebody that gets a lot of stuff done, like, are they really ambitious, or have they just simply trained their brain to focus on the positive outcome versus focusing on the cost and the work and the effort that it's going to take up front to get where they want to go? Because the people that focus on the cost, that focus on the effort, they don't do it. It overcomes them. They're just like, that's going to be too hard. That's going to be so painful. I don't want to do it. And they never do it. And it isn't necessarily that they are lazy or that they don't have ambition. They've just built a habit to focus on the cost versus focusing on the outcome. And I see this when I talk to people who are interested in joining the deal room. There's really two types of people that I talk to. One really, really focuses in on the cost. And I don't mean the money. The deal room costs a little bit of money, but they focus on the cost of, like, well, how long is this going to take? When can I get a deal? How hard is it going to be to find a deal? How can I get the money raised? And on and on and on. And those are important pieces. And you got to solve those pieces. But when they're focusing on, like, hey, I'm going to give this a shot for 1 or 2 or 3 months, and if it doesn't work, then I'm going to move on to something else. And then sometimes I talk to people that are like, this is what I want to do because this is going to make legacy wealth for my family. This is going to set up my kids. This is going to set up my retirement. I'm going to be able to travel the world with my wife. I'm going to be able to have my time back. I'm going to be able to do whatever I want. I'm going to be able to refinance these buildings. I'm going to be able to live off the cash flow. I'm going to build something significant. It's going to be great. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It doesn't matter how painful it is or how many times I hit against a brick wall until I break through it, because that's where I'm going, right? They see the end goal. They see the upside. They see the payoff at the end of the day. And that's what they focus on. And that's what keeps them in the trenches actually doing the work that's going to get them to the payoff, right? The people that focus on, well, how hard is it? How many calls am I going to have to make? How many offers am I going to have to make? How many brokers am I going to have to talk to? Are investors going to reject me? Can I even find a deal on it? It's like they're beat before they get started. Or if they do get started, they're going to give up very, very, very quickly because they're focusing on the cost up front versus the payoff. In my prior business, I had costs of doing that business and the payoff just wasn't there. Right? That's what I love about commercial real estate is the payoff is there. Yes, it's a big boulder and it's hard to get it moving, but once it's rolling, it self-perpetuates and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and exponentially scales, and it's worth it. The payoff is massive. If you're going to go out hunting, you might as well hunt for elephants instead of squirrels and mice and rats, right? I want to find something and take something down that's going to feed my family for months or years or even a lifetime, right? I want that payoff to be there, and that's what I focus on, is the payoff. And so as I'm sitting here in the shower thinking through these things, I'm actually building the habit of focusing on the payoff and focusing on the upside and why it's going to be worth it. And I'm not really even thinking about the pain and the cost. It's like, yeah, that's going to be a part of it, but it's worth it. I'm willing to go through that. I'm willing to walk through that. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be hard. There may be some sleepless nights. There might be some problems that I haven't encountered yet that I'm going to have to push through, but I'm confident that I'll be able to solve them because I want that payoff. Right? I want to get where I'm going. Right now, if you've been listening to my podcast the last couple episodes, you know that I'm working on taking down a development deal in a flex warehouse space. And in the beginning, I was thinking about the costs. I really was. I'll be honest. I was like, man, this is going to be so hard. I'm going to be beating my head against the wall with the county and trying to, raise the money and managing all these subcontractors. And what if the budget goes over budget and all the work it is just to even build the budget? And what if the city turns me down or they won't let me tie into the sewer? or they find some, endangered species on the land and I can't clear out the trees, or there's grand trees right in the middle of all these things that could go wrong, and pain and cost and brain damage. And I'm like starting to think, man, do I really want to spend the next 6 to 9 months ramming against this problem? The cost of that is going to be great. I mean, one, it's going to take my resources. I'm going to have to pay for some of this due diligence stuff out of pocket. I'm going to pay AMD. It's going to cost me like 50 grand to pay for that stuff up front. It's going to cost me my comfort. It's going to cost me because I'm going to have to take on a loan. I'm going to have to raise investors' money, and that's stress and that's pressure. It's also going to I'm not going to be able to play pickleball as much. As silly as that sounds, I'm not going to have as much free time because I'm going to have to be working, burning the candle at both ends to get another project off the ground. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to do all that. Like, that is a lot. Like, maybe I should just, go find another apartment complex or another commercial building and just stick with something that is maybe a little easier. But then I started thinking about the payoff. Started thinking about the end goal, right? Which at this point in time is probably 2 years away, maybe even longer. But the payoff and the real numbers around this deal are, it looks like we can be all in for this deal for about 4.1, 4.2 million with a sales price of, 8 million to 8.5 million, maybe even 9 million, depending on how well the deal goes. And that cost is including like the land, development, contingency, realtor commissions, marketing costs, everything, right? All in for 4.2 to 4.5. And I start thinking about the payoff. Wow, this payoff chunk is about $4 million, maybe even more. And I've got a partner. He'll make some of that. Investors will make some of that. But it's looking like, netting to me, I could net maybe $3 million. $3 million in cash, bam, in my account, liquid, not tied up in equity, not tied up in real estate, but actual liquid cash that I can then put into my debt fund. I can do more hard money lending with it. I can put it in a money market and earn a couple percent on it. I can put it in the stock market. I can do whatever I want. But I start to think about, man, how good would it feel to have, that level of liquidity? Because I pushed up my liquidity and then I loaned out my money. I tied up in more real estate deals. And I'm like, okay, I would like to have more liquidity because that's going to help me feel better, help me sleep better at night. And I just want it. I want that payoff. And I'm also start to think about, man, I could take my kids by this job site. They could see in real life, like what I'm doing concretely. Like I could make them pick up nails and boards and give them a little job to clean up the job site. And they could see in real time their dad taking a raw piece of dirt, turning into 38,000 square feet of flex warehouse spaces, marketing it, getting these units sold, getting them rented out, whatever we do with the project, and seeing that thing work and just showing them what's possible, right? And so that became a piece of the payoff to me. And so the more I focused on the payoff, the more I was willing to do this. And conversely, I had another piece of land in Monk's Corner that was smaller. It was only 1.8 acres. And I could only fit like 18 to 20 units on this deal. And it was getting kind of more expensive per unit, but it was still worth it to do. Like it was still a viable deal. And I could have maybe made, $1 million, $1.5 million. But then when I thought about, well, if something goes over budget and then I've got to split up the deal with some partners and investors and, I may only make $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. And to me, it was like, that's not worth it, right? The payoff is not worth the cost. So let me find a bigger piece of land. I found a 4.5 acre parcel that I could fit 33 units on. And that parcel or that payoff released the dopamine, released the endorphins, and overcame that cost of just focusing on how hard this was going to be. And so in building that habit of focusing on the payoff, I was able to be ambitious and to get a lot of stuff done. And it's easy, right? It's like every bid I'm getting, I'm excited. I'm one more step closer. Every meeting I have with the county, every time I talk to the civil engineer and we get another concept plan, we revise it and on and on. I mean, yes, it's tedious. I'm not going to say it's fun, but I'm not thinking about that as something that's hard. I'm thinking about, wow, this is going to be exciting when we're pouring those slabs. This is going to be exciting when we're framing up these buildings. This will be exciting when we get the first unit sold and the 10th unit sold and the 20th unit sold. This will be exciting when we're building phase 2 and the whole thing is paid for. Now we're generating, profits on this deal. Like, that's going to be fun. That's going to be exciting. That's going to be great. That's going to be amazing. And I keep telling myself this, and that keeps helping me to push forward. So if you are in the position, right? Maybe you've got a couple rental homes. Maybe you've got a job that you're not crazy about. Start dreaming. Start thinking. Don't just dream and not do anything about it, but start thinking about the payoff, right? And if you can identify an opportunity or a field where that payoff is great and it's worth it, that is going to release that dopamine. That's going to build the habit of focusing on the payoff versus building the habit of focusing on the cost. Do an audit of yourself. Are you the type of person that looks at something and you're like, oh, that's going to be a lot of work. That's going to be really hard. That's never going to work. This is going to be an obstacle, on and on and on. And guys, I don't want you to be overconfident and not count the costs of things and go into things with eyes wide open. Like, that is important. But if your habit is to just focus on the difficulty and the emotional toll of taking the effort, if that's like your default, then you're going to stay stuck. You're going to stay where you're at. If you can change that default to start thinking about the payoff, right? You're just changing your thinking. Our brain is so powerful. A simple change like this, where I'm going to start training my brain to focus on the habit of thinking about the outcome, right? And once you've got that motivation set, yes, you need to vet out the details and all the stuff that you need to do. You need to walk into deals wide open or eyes wide open or kill them if they're not a good opportunity and a safe opportunity. But if you find yourself with laziness, right, where you're not willing to go out there and look for deals, you're not willing to cold call owners, you're not willing to make offers to brokers and send out letters of intent and talk to investors and post on social media, and it's because you're focusing on the cost of doing that versus the incredible outcome that you could build. I think about my social media presence, which is, I would say minimum, maybe mid-tier at best. And it's amazing, right? The opportunities that come to me because of this are amazing, but it was a lot of work, a lot of posts, a lot of thinking, a lot of writing, a lot of podcasts and recordings and et cetera, but I'm thinking about the outcome. And that's why I still progress on this journey, is because that outcome can get bigger and better and greater, and the payoff can get bigger and better and greater. And so I'm willing to continue to put in the work. So start auditing your thoughts. When you're feeling lazy, like, it may be that you're laying on the couch, right? You're watching TV. Let's start small. You're laying on the couch, you're watching TV, and you realize, man, I'm kind of thirsty, and a snack would be good. And I also kind of have to pee, but I really don't want to get up. Like, I'm comfortable on the couch, I'm watching my show. I don't want to, pause the TV, get up and do all this stuff. That's right there. You're already thinking about the costs, right? That's your habit. That's your bend. That's the way you've trained your brain. You're thinking about the costs. So when this happens to you, I want you to stop and think, man, think about me. I'm on the couch. I got my little bowl of chips. I got my glass of water. I don't have to go to the bathroom. I feel relaxed, and I'm in a much, much better state than I was 5 minutes ago. You know what? I'm going to get up off the couch, go to the bathroom. I'm going to get a glass of water. I'm going to make that bowl of chips, and I'm going to come back to the couch and enjoy my show and have those chips. Think about the outcome. Think about the payoff. Let that dopamine feed into your brain and generate that ambition to get up and go do something. I know I'm using a silly, stupid example, but this habit is incredibly powerful. And if you start rewiring your brain to focus on the outcome versus the costs, it can change your life. All right, guys, make it a great week, and we'll see you next time.